Kate Talbot. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm very good. We've had 2 Talbots on the Giant Pod now. The first Talbot is your sister.
Talbots, actually.
Talbot, sorry, Talbot. Talbot. Oh, dear.
No.
We've had Eleanor on.
Yep.
And so I feel like I kind of know part of your life story just through knowing that you guys would have, well, she was in tow to you because she's your younger sister.
That's right, yeah.
But just tell me a little bit about yourself. You're an artist. You do textiles work of a sort of a punk rock leaning, I guess. Or
I'm
punk in spirit.
punk in spirit, yeah. Yeah, bullshit I'd call it more than anything.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm an artist. I have an interest in social political things more than anything, and kind of wish to express whatever my feelings are about that through that medium.
Right.
So I don't do twee stuff, even though my medium is kind of considered twee. I use it like a soft medium for hard topics.
Oh.
Is basically what it is.
Right.
And that can really offend people too.
Right.
You can take any subject, and if you make a piece about it in wool, it can soften it for a lot of people because they'll suddenly see it through different eyes. And then you get that brigade that are really offended that you've taken something that's soft and woolly and used it, for something that is quite brutal in many ways, So, yeah, I like that juxtaposition.
I like that as well.
Yeah. I didn't start out that way, though.
Right.
I started in graphics. I went to graphic design college and, did all that. Loved having a brief and coming up, playing with words, all that kind of stuff. But this is pre-computer. And I have not got great eyesight.
Okay.
And everything was done on light boxes.
I see, yeah.
And letter-set catalogues.
What's that?
What's a letter-set catalogue? It's a thing of beauty.
Right.
We used to get letters that were printed on sheets, and you use a pencil and you rub them onto the page. That was letter-set.
Okay.
This is before you could just go into Photoshop and do whatever you liked. So... And you would trace things from the letter-set catalogue, which is every kind of font you could get. You would photocopy it, go to your light box, trace it. Of course, I couldn't see the line to trace it, and I got really quite freaked out about it.
Right.
And I thought, I can't carry on like this. Well, I wouldn't be able to do this for a living. So I decided to quit graphics and go to foundation course and have a go at everything and see what worked best for me. I should say I was a mature student. This wasn't me as a young kid.
Right.
We emigrated when I really wanted to go to art college when I was 16.
Yeah, because I was going to say you've had a somewhat international life, haven't you?
I have.
In some ways.
A bit, yeah.
Is it more or less international than Eleanor's was?
No, about the same. The same. Oh, we emigrated at the same time, only she was very young.
Very young.
But I was 15 and a half, I think, when we emigrated, and I didn't want to go.
Right.
Because I love my music. I was an avid reader of the NME. The idea of just uprooting myself at that age to a country I'd never been to was horrifying.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to art college. Because I was reading about punk bands and everything. It was all rock and roll. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I wasn't allowed. So
was punk rock frowned upon by your parents? Because from what I've heard is that you had didn't you have fairly liberal parents?
No, my parents, they weren't bothered about our music taste. They were quite forward-thinking. No, I think it was just, the real issue was that my parents' marriage was failing.
Right.
And rather than sort of own up to that, they did what a lot of people do. They think, we'll go somewhere else and try again. But of course, you bring all the problems with you, and it just breaks down somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened. It was like, no, we're going to emigrate. We emigrated, and my parents ended up splitting up over there, which unfortunately split the whole family apart, you know, so that was not a happy time. And I did want to go to art college. That's what I wanted to do, But instead I had to go work for a living in a country I had nothing in common with.
Right. So at this point, you were in Ireland.
No, Scotland.
Oh,
You got to keep up here.
Okay. All right. So where does the journey start for you?
The journey started. So I was born in London.
Right.
Just by accident. My mum happened to be on holiday. I was born in England.
She knew she was pregnant, though, right?
She did know she was pregnant. Yeah, I mean, she says I wasn't premature, but why she would be on holiday heavily pregnant, I don't know. But anyway.
So it was a bad curry.
Yeah.
Boom, there you go.
I was born in my grandpa's bed.
Really?
Yeah. Born at home with 2 teeth, apparently. So,
No.
make of that what you will.
No.
2 front teeth.
Born with 2 front teeth.
Been talking ever since.
Sounds like some amazing lyrics to like a blues song.
Yeah, I think.
I was born with 2 front teeth. Have shut us since.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we lived in Ireland till I was 10.
Okay.
Then
Wait,
the family
London
moved.
and then Ireland.
Well, I didn't live in London. I was born in
You were
London.
born there. Oh, sorry.
But
Yeah,
my
she
mum
was on holiday. Right.
Grew up south of Dublin.
Yeah.
And then, you don't really emigrate, but went from Ireland to Scotland,
Okay.
which is where my grandparents are from. And 6 years after that, Canada.
Okay. So were you quite pleased to leave Ireland?
No, I loved Ireland, actually.
Okay. Because we were
Ireland-
hanging out the other day and you were telling me about your experiences of Catholic school.
Oh, I
and
didn't
how-
love that part.
Yeah, and that sounded to me quite interesting because I've heard a lot about old school Catholic school
Yeah.
and how hardcore some of it was. And it sounded like, did you say there was an orphanage attached to your...
Most of the state schools had orphanages.
Right.
Yeah, ours was St. Joseph's, and there was a big kind of foreboding building next to our part of the school was modern, newly built, but the old part was, quite archaic. You used to see both sides. We were day students, and in comparison, we were quite well off. But you saw this other more harrowing side. I hated school, but I now know, and the same with high school. I was a daydreamer.
Right.
I couldn't concentrate on anything. So I hated school because it was just a trial for me. They'd say, Talbot, concentrate. And I would, be like pressing my eyes closed together going, God, yeah, I can't concentrate. And next thing I'm like traipsing through the daisies somewhere. I just can't do it.
So school was almost like putting you in a mental box.
Yeah, I was just a daydreamer. I've always been a daydreamer that way, and observational. I guess I was just an observational kid. You notice everything around you, and I questioned everything around me. And the one thing you must never do is question nuns, and certainly not about religion.
Right.
And I used to do that.
Oh. So what was your questions?
Who made God?
And then what did they go? What did they say?
Well,
Nobody made God.
You just got a slap for that. Yeah, but who made God? Wallop. No, and why can't my pets go to heaven? And what is purgatory?
Wait, pets don't go to heaven?
No.
Oh my God, where are my fish?
Not only do they not go to heaven, but unbaptized people just stay in limbo.
Specifically evil, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
like
This, how does a kid get their head around that? They don't.
it's too much.
But having said that, Ireland was also quite forward-thinking in many ways, because it had a big influence from the States. So we used to go to a great cinema, we'd get all the American films, our television used to get all the American shows, so you were kind of torn between these two cultures all the time,
And why is that? Is this because I think you were saying, I think it was you that was saying when we were talking the other day that Ireland was a bit like a third world country, but not?
Yeah, I mean, there was extreme poverty, and you didn't have to go too far to see it. I mean, I remember slums in Dublin were like real kind of Victorian slums. You saw that. But then you'd go into like the centre of Dublin and there'd be incredible modern buildings or, nice trains and, this kind of, two different worlds. It's port city. You would get a lot of things happening in Dublin, It's just... yeah, we did. And my father had travelled the world. My mum had travelled. So, I was torn between two kind of cultures all the time.
Right. And so why was the decision made to go to Scotland?
That's a whole other story. My father was he was a police officer at Dublin Port and Docks.
Right.
And this is 1972, I think. There was a raid by the IRA on the docks, and he was held at gunpoint for many hours.
Wow.
And it wasn't very pleasant. That kind of blew his mind. He didn't want to.
Right, we're going.
Yeah, he just didn't want to be a part of it anymore, especially when they caught the gang, and the guy that had him at gunpoint was only about 17. They did actually shoot a guy, but thankfully it was only a flesh wound. He didn't.
Right.
They were trying to get the money from the wages, the dockers' wages.
I see.
And the guy wouldn't open the what do you call
they
it?
gave
The
him
safe, so they shot him, and
just to show they were serious.
Yeah.
Right.
So my dad was saying, like, you're not a hero in those situations. Not when you got a sawn-off shotgun at your neck. So
Yeah.
I think that just was the last straw for him.
Well, that's fair enough. If there was a reason to get out of Dodge.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just, because he'd traveled the world and everything, and he always had a love affair with England and English culture. He also loved Hollywood films and things like that. So I think he found the sort of Catholic Ireland of the 60s very oppressive.
Right.
Because he was more forward thinking.
Is he Irish?
He was Irish, yeah.
Right.
He was very Irish, but but a worldly Irishman,
Right.
And he went to private school, even though he came from working class. My grandmother paid for him to go to private school, which actually was a mistake.
Really?
Because it taught him to be something he wasn't. Do you know what I mean? He didn't come from money.
Yeah.
So he always had a chip on his shoulder all his life because, like as with people who go to Eton, and you're taught that you are something other.
Yeah.
And so he never really found his place. He was always sort of striving for, it's...
I know what he's around so many people who he knows that as soon as that education ends, there's another round of privilege coming their way.
Yeah.
And his ends. Potentially.
Yeah. And I think he always felt, torn. All his life he felt torn. I think that's why we moved so much. He could never find where he belonged.
Right.
Shortly before he died, he did end up exactly where he wanted to be because he was acting, he was an artist, and he ended up living at the Performing Arts Lodge in Vancouver and getting involved there. They had their own theatre. He basically became the granddaddy of the building and put on shows, and he was truly happy there. He'd finally found his place, but it took till his, almost till his dotage to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And do you think that maybe, although you said that his private education was possibly a mistake,
Yeah.
do you feel that extra level of education that he was getting was possibly responsible for installing that worldliness in him?
Yeah, because
there's a world out there and you can access it.
Yeah, but he also was in the
stuff.
Merchant Navy. You see, he travelled.
Right.
So it's a funny story. He was sent from Ireland to go get his elder brother who had joined the Merchant Navy, and his mother sent him over to talk sense into his brother and bring him back.
Right.
But what happened was his brother talked him into joining him, and they ended up going around the world. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's funny, isn't it?
And the stories he used to tell of, like, travelling to Africa and stuff, and the Spice Islands and everything. He had a whale of a time.
I bet.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go, you're in Scotland for a little while, and then your parents' marriage is starting to disintegrate.
Yeah.
And they go, all right, let's try a new blank slate. Let's try again. You go to Canada. Which part of Canada? I guess Vancouver.
No. I think if it had been Vancouver, we might have all been okay.
Right.
No, we ended up
why
in...
is that? Why do you think that?
Because Vancouver is a port city. It's very modern, it's
familiar in some
culturally,
ways.
The same as most cities. But where we ended up in Calgary, which is a western oil town, basically. It is a beautiful city. And I don't want to knock Calgary because I don't want to knock Canada. It was me who couldn't settle.
Right.
But, it was a different culture. Calgary's very famous for the Calgary Stampede, which is cowboys and Indians and that lifestyle. And it's also all about oil. It's an oil town, so that was what the lifestyle was.
So I guess it's very cold in Calgary, right? Is
in
it
wintertime,
northwest, is it?
Yeah.
So it's a hard working, tough. I guess it's a very working class place.
Yeah.
But then you add in those extreme elements in terms of the climate. And I guess you got yourself a very not rough, but tough town, hardy.
It wasn't. No, I'm making it sound like we were on oil rigs. We weren't. It's a modern. It's. If you think of Dallas, it's like the mirror image of Dallas. It's a very similar city.
Okay.
So it's all skyscrapers, big business, oil business. So actually very modern, but not very cultural. The music and everything was still quite redneck compared to what I was used to.
So you'd come from, what year is this, by the way?
78.
78. So you are coming off the heels of punk rock.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you've gone to Canada. You know about punk rock.
Yeah.
You've been into punk rock. Your life's been changed by punk rock.
I mean, not just punk rock. I mean, Ziggy Stardust, everything. I was into that. Yeah.
The whole, I know what you mean. And so that's life-changing stuff, isn't it? Because that is the stuff at that age. I find when people at that age find punk rock and find stuff like Bowie and the Ziggy Stardust and all that stuff, that's life changing and it really informs who you are for a good few years at the very least. And for many, it gets refined and whatever, but they carry that with them as you do, as I will. So not a lot of culture in Calgary. So you get there and you're like...
Not a culture I related to. Obviously there is culture. It's just not one that I could...
Not punk rock, not what you... No. So you tasted punk rock and everything and you were into it and you were in the heart of it, I guess. Yeah. And now... Could you not have imported punk rock to Calgary? It's all on you. It's all on you, Kate.
No. Actually, what I did was I put an ad in the NME.
Did they have NME in Calgary?
No, I wrote to the NME. From Canada, I wrote to the NME.
Yeah.
And I put an ad in saying, I'm really into Ziggy and what have you. I'm over here. I'm, I don't feel like this is my place. And I got just loads. I ended up with 33 pen pals, mostly male.
Right.
And they saved my life. They'd send me mixtapes and magazines and tell me there was one guy in particular, he was fantastic. I never met him.
Right.
But he kind of, took pity on me and he'd write to me and he'd send me mixtapes and he'd tell me that he'd just read this great book. So I would get the book and he basically led me into all my tastes seemed to have come from him,
right.
Because he was, he was into German authors at the time, like Günter Grass and things like that. And he'd say, you must read this book. And it was a lifeline. It was amazing.
Wow. Wow. And have you never met that? You've never met this person. At what point did contact cease with this person? Sort of pen pals also.
Believe it or not, my handbag was stolen before I was due to come back to Britain on holiday, and it had all my contacts in it, and I didn't know them off by heart. And this is before mobile phones.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Never found the addresses. Never found.
Do you know what his name was?
Yeah. Keith Pearson. Doesn't sound like anything, does it?
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to meet him though.
Oh, he's better as
because it's
phantom
like,
of your past.
Yeah, because I did meet I did meet 2 people that I wrote to, and they were
Disappointing?
not. Yeah, hugely. Because some people only live on the page.
Ooh.
Some people are amazing on a page.
Right.
Their personality, everything about them lives on this page, and then you meet them in real life, and
They're a paperweight.
yeah, exactly. A total lightweight, sometimes when you go to shake somebody's hand and it's a wet lettuce, and it's crushing when you've thought that they were these, giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not, and they can't even look you in the eye. They're so nervous, and that was shattering. I was devastated when I met one in particular,
Right.
that's what he was like, and it's like, no.
You were so cool.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
He couldn't even look me in the eye. He couldn't. Yeah, it was terrible. It was, very crushing.
Well, maybe this is why these people have pen pals.
No, I think that's very true.
Because they get to. Maybe they're not exaggerating. Maybe that is their internal monologue.
No, I think some people. Yeah, that's their comfort zone. That's where they are, and I ruined it because I wanted to meet them.
Right.
And I'm devastated that I did that. So I decided I'd never do that again.
That's fascinating.
It's like I never wanted to meet David Bowie. I adored him, but I never wanted to meet him because he wasn't real. Ziggy wasn't real. He's an alien. You know what I mean? We had this special relationship, but it wasn't something that was grounded.
Yeah.
So no, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah, no, they do say never meet your heroes, don't they?
Yeah.
And there's a great quote from Lemmy, and I'm probably paraphrasing it, but he said something like, "You don't want your rock stars to look like your next door neighbour.
No.
You want them to look like they've come here from outer space."
Absolutely, and that's what I felt about Ziggy. Yeah. When he moved to New York, married a supermodel, straightened his teeth, and then floated himself on the stock exchange. That was, this ain't rock and roll. This is genocide. That was the end for me.
Right.
I was so shattered that he did that. Because he completely changed. I loved his crooked teeth.
Right.
That was all part of the look. You know what I mean? It just, I.
So you felt he was betraying your version of it.
He became real. That's the
hero,
problem.
yeah.
No, he just became a real person.
Right.
A real person who was bothered about the look of his teeth because suddenly he's with a supermodel. That's how I interpreted it.
Well, supermodels can, they can put a stark contrast on you.
Yeah,
can't they, in many
and I
ways.
just thought, oh no, that's not it.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah. So you were in Canada, and so you're like, okay, now I have to work. You wanted to do art college. Was there no sort of infrastructure in terms of the education realm for art colleges?
No, of course there are.
Right.
There are, absolutely, but you have to pay for it, and it's very expensive. And I should say there would have been underground clubs and things. I just never found them.
Right.
They would have been there. They weren't that backward, but I couldn't find my niche. I couldn't find those people. And when I did find anything that was artistic or whatever, as I said earlier, it's art with a capital A. It's not the kind of thing you can just mosey on into. You've had to do your time and because culturally new countries are like that. They become more passionate than they need to be, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like they're the first ones to ever discover things like that, and it becomes very pious and so I was never comfortable with that. I could never just sort of gate crash into anything like that.
Oh, so it was too right. So you found it sort of not inaccessible, but it just wasn't your thing, or you found
I didn't know how to get in.
Right, so it was
whenever there was
cliquey
very
right.
cliquey, and that cultural divide, I couldn't really find a way into that.
Surely they would have loved, because you would have had this sort of new girl in town, sort of like, you're not from there. That makes you inherently interesting.
I think the problem is when you go and move to a different country, when you don't want to go, and, the culture shock was quite severe. what you want to do is find familiar. So you hang around with other British people and all the things that you miss, which is the worst thing you can do. Because you end up hanging around with people you wouldn't choose to necessarily hang around with normally. And you become this closed little group, you know, and the Brits abroad are the worst, you know. So you have your own little Englands, which that's not what you need to do. You really need to move in to the rest of the culture. But I kind of never really met many people, you know, that I could bond with because of who I hung around with and who I worked with, because it was in the oil industry. They were all geologists and, you know, they weren't really into my kind of music.
Fascinating people in their own right, geologists. My Charlie, who was guitarist in Sick Ones, he's got a geology degree.
Right.
And for hours on tour, he'd just be hitting me up with geology facts. And I used to love it. So geologists are fascinating people, but I imagine they're not all like Charlie. I imagine there's a lot of them who are quite studious, bookworms, and maybe not. No,
actually, there was one guy who was a great friend of mine over there, and he had a brilliant music taste, absolutely superb. He was like, he came from Dallas originally in America, and he'd been in the Vietnam War, which had disturbed him somewhat, but he had an incredible music taste, and he used to make me great mixtapes. But everything else about him, we had nothing in common.
Right.
Because he was still an oil man, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had this great music taste, but it didn't kind of, it was just music. It never went anywhere else. It didn't go into literature or films or anything like that. It was just his music. And so, you know, we didn't hang out together.
Right.
You know?
What was on these mixtapes?
Oh, I mean, he'd put things like the Hoodoo Gurus in with, trying to think, Teardrop Explodes, you know, things I wouldn't even think he'd know about.
Right.
You know, and then he'd mix them in with some obscure independent from Mexico or whatever. You know, he had a terrific music taste.
Flexing on you, he was.
Yeah.
Great stuff. And so at what point do you decide that you need to be the artist that you are?
I was always it in some form or another, but mostly in writing rather than art per se. I wrote all the terrible angst teen poetry that my dear sister has put into she hand wrote it all out in a book and gave it to me for my birthday one year, and it was like, no, this is going to come back and haunt me someday. So even if I burnt that, I think if I ever become famous, there'll be another copy lying somewhere.
There's a backup, an off-site backup.
Oh my God, it's embarrassing when you read through.
I moved recently, and in the move, I found all kinds of things that I thought had been long gone, lost, or things I forgot existed. I found all kinds of Thunderbirds memorabilia the other day, which is great. I love that. That's a big part of my childhood. But I also found a folder titled Lyrics.
Oh.
And Harry's smiling because he might see this next time he comes around my house.
God.
And might hide it.
I might show you the book if I get drunk one day.
Right, okay. All right, we'll make sure that happens. And yeah, I looked in this thing, and it was from like before I was drumming in a band. I was asked, because it's one of those things, a bit like what you were saying, it's where you try and find your kin.
Yeah.
And in school, I was one of a handful of kids that really liked metal or whatever, this alternative music. And so by virtue of just enjoying that music, you get asked to join a band because you're the only one who could possibly maybe imitate what you're listening to with some others and just see what happens. So I started out being a vocalist, a singer for a metal band, which quickly turned into a punk band that I drummed for because I was doing cadet stuff. But so this folder of lyrics is literally from a very small window of time where I was like, all right, I'm the singer of a band now. What am I going to do? And they're just the worst. They are the worst.
What rhymes with?
And they're so dark and stuff. You'd have thought that I was like, I don't know. It's just like I read it. I'm like, what were you thinking?
Is it any worse than this?
Go.
Subjected to reality, a timeless lord of fate, when Homo sapien ruled the world and death was born of hate.
That's actually miles better than anything Mine would have been like, through the shadow of the valley of death, I hate you.
Oh dear, yes, awful.
So you were a writer.
I was going to be a rock journalist. That's what my dream was.
Okay.
I wanted to be the next Julie Burchill.
And who's that? I probably feel like I should know.
Oh my God, you don't know who Julie Burchill is? She was the queen of the NME.
Right, okay.
She was, oh my God, an amazing journalist, a complete psycho. You know, if she didn't like you, she'd ruin your career kind of thing. I can't really put it into words. She was everything.
Right.
And evil with it, you know. And then I once, years later, I once heard her talk, and she has a little munchkin voice. I couldn't believe it.
Again, the way that you perceive these people on the page is they're these mighty monoliths.
Yeah.
And then when you meet them, you're like, you ain't shit.
But she's still going strong.
Right.
Yeah, she's quite an interesting character. Yeah, she was married to Tony Parsons, the author, Tony Parsons.
Okay. Not Alan Parsons.
Not Alan Parsons, no.
Tony Parsons.
I don't
I've
know
heard
if she
of
has
that.
a sense of humour. I was going to be a rock journalist.
Right.
That was my dream.
Okay. And was she your main influence?
Yeah.
Were you more sort of benevolent than she was, or were you trying to find that angle where you could be a little bit mean and get some attention?
No. I mean, I didn't have no experience in it at all. I just used to love the NME. You know, that just seemed cool.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know anything about music. It just seemed like a cool thing to do.
Yeah. Why not? Get in a van with a band and disappear, chronicle it, take photos.
Yep.
Rolling Stone, maybe.
Why not?
So how far did you get with that?
Nowhere.
Oh.
Don't be daft. It's Calgary. I got nowhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How many like sort of original bands playing original material were in Calgary at that time? Was it loads or was it a handful? I don't even know how big Calgary is.
It's a big city. All the big bands came to Calgary.
Right.
Yeah.
So you weren't that off grid.
Oh no.
I feel like I'm painting it out to be this like weird sort of strange,
and I'm doing
frosty
it.
backwards
I'm doing
place.
it a disservice. I saw amazing bands in Calgary. I really did, but it took a few years to get established to get my apartment and do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, the first few years were in the wilderness, like they would be. You know, I was only a teenager. You know, so finding my way.
Yeah.
But then when I did discover that I could go see bands and all kinds, I mean, I saw, you name it, I saw them there, you know. So, yeah, it was good.
Okay. So Calgary, we're good with Calgary. Calgary's good.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, the problem was me. I never wanted to go. I ended up in a town that is all oil industry. There's nothing else, you know, so that's your culture. And you know, oil by its very nature is a redneck industry. So, yeah, I was lost.
And like you said, it took a few years to get established. How were you in those days? Were you shy? Were you outgoing? Were you the kind of person that would just go, there's a gig on tonight.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I know what the vibe of that's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm just going to rock up on my own and I'll have a friend by the end of the night, or I'll try and introduce myself.
No, I don't think it. I'm actually quiet. I kind of keep to myself. I mean, I would go out with friends at weekends, and if I knew a big band was coming, I would go and see that. But I would always go with other people.
Right.
I wasn't that brave.
Yeah.
I mean, these were big stadiums. You know, I didn't go to like little venues. Although I did, my friend's birthday, we went to a bar called Frankie and Johnny's, and the guy playing the house band was one Mr. Brian Adams.
Ooh.
It was my birthday, and he sang Ziggy Stardust to me.
Did he?
And that's before he was famous.
Oh.
6 months later, he became a hit. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how do we get to your graphic design work? Where do we go?
I had a great job in Canada eventually. I had a fantastic job. I worked by myself on the 40th floor of a skyscraper, which up there was just like a huge storage area with fantastic views all the way around. And I worked with maps. I catalogued maps, again, before computers or just at the cusp of computers coming in. So I would be smoking up there. I'd be playing my music. I'd just be dancing around doing my thing.
What year is this?
This is 86, 85, 86.
Okay.
Fabulous. You know, I had a great time. But I was on contract. I worked for myself and I was on contract to Textile. And eventually my contract ended. I finished the work. And that was the job. And they offered me another job working in a department I didn't like. And I went for lunch with a friend of mine. It was a very boozy lunch. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I don't want to work with this person. And she said, you're always going on about going back to Britain. Why don't you just put your money where your mouth is? And, you know, we drank a bit more. And on the way back to the office, I bought a one-way ticket. And 3 days later, I was in England. And I don't know what happened.
Did you?
I was high on Valium because I'm terrified of flying.
I thought you meant the whole time. Then.
No,
I thought she's here by mistake.
Yeah, no, really. I made this decision to leave, and that was the only way I could have done it. Like, just buy a ticket and go.
Do it, not overthink it.
Yeah, don't overthink it. I said to my sister, one of my sisters, I said, I'm going. And she came over with her friends, and people were saying, I'll give you $20 for your, you know, for this chair, and I'll take this, and, you know. And they stripped my place, and like I say, 3 days later, I'm on a plane.
You didn't leave any records behind, did you?
I did. I left my entire collection of Bowie stuff behind, yeah. Everything.
So you just took like carry-on stuff, did you? Just a suitcase?
Cases, that's all I took.
And did you have anywhere to go when you got here?
Well, surprisingly...
Not one of my pen pals.
No, God, no. My apartment, I used to make, we used to go to an Irish bar, actually, and a lot of the soldiers who were based at Red Deer used to come into Calgary at the weekends, and they would go to the same bar, and you'd get to know them all. And one guy, his wife was coming over, because in the army you're allowed to bring family members over every once in a while. So I would lend them my apartment, and I'd go stay at my sister's. So I got quite pally with them, and they said, oh, if you ever come over and you need anywhere to stay, you know, we'll put you up. So I'd phoned them, and they said, yeah, you know, come on over. And I arrived in Heathrow and phoned them, and they just got posting that morning to Berlin, so I couldn't go to them. And so I was kind of desperate, like, what do I do? And I phoned my sister, who lived in LA, but her best friend lived in Yorkshire, and she gave me her number, and I phoned her, and she said, yeah, get on a train, come up, and that was that. I came up to Yorkshire, got a job within the week, and 2 months later, the company I was working for got bought out by the company that Neil worked for, and met him. And
I was going to say, enter Neil.
Enter Neil.
I love Neil.
Yeah.
He's such a lovely man.
Yeah. And he went to art college, you see. He was a graphic designer.
Right.
And I said, I've always wanted to do that. And he just said, why don't you? And I didn't know that you could just apply like that.
Right.
So I did. And we were, like, the night before my interview at the college, we were making up a portfolio, because obviously I didn't have anything.
Right.
And I had a couple of old drawings here and there, and we were at a photocopier at his office making up things. I remember I was photocopying the Mona Lisa and colouring her in with highlighter pens, just doing really stupid things. And we just made this portfolio, and I got in.
Did Neil chuck you a few pieces?
No, actually he didn't. No,
so it was all the original on the cusp.
No, he did.
Stuff.
I did have some stuff with me, some drawings and things that I used to do. And I got in. And I got a full grant as well, which was fabulous. Yeah. So,
is that because your stuff was so good?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And where was this? In Yorkshire?
Yeah, Batley Art College, which is it's a great art college. So I went to do graphic design because that's what he did.
Yeah.
And I loved it because it was the perfect pairing of word and image, you know, how to, you know, you got a campaign and you got to bring this to people, how would you do it? And I really enjoyed that. And then roll on to the part where I couldn't see the letraset.
Yeah.
And then I transferred over to foundation and then learned that actually I quite liked playing with different mediums and stuff. And so I went to do a fine art degree.
So, one thing I'm wondering as well is that you've gone from, because of the eyesight. I know a lot of people. I don't know a lot of people. I know some people who have been like seamstresses or have done lots of fiddly work with textiles over the years, and their eyes are shot to pieces from all of the intensive focusing and squinting and stuff like that. You didn't come across those issues with your eyesight with this when you were working with needle and thread and stuff?
No. The problem with my eyesight is I have astigmatism.
Right.
So I couldn't see. When I had to use a light box, I couldn't see that properly. There's actually nothing wrong with my eyes. It was just that process, which at the time was how you had to do it, that I couldn't cope with.
Okay.
No. And I don't really consider myself a needlework person. That's just, this is the weird thing. I went to do fine art, so it was painting.
Right.
So I did painting before I did anything. And it was only because, you go to fine art, you spend the first couple of years just, banging into walls, not knowing what you're supposed to do. And nobody really tells you. And then suddenly you've got 6 months before you have to put on a degree show and you're panicking. That's what it's like. Everybody's wandering around going, oh, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I had been reading a book by Derek Jarman. He just died of AIDS. And I picked up one of his books and I was reading it. I really, really enjoyed it. And it was at the time, the AIDS crisis, and when they had that famous quilt, in America, where they did the quilts to remember everybody.
I do not remember this.
Okay. There was a big thing in the States, in San Francisco particularly, people who died of AIDS, their family would make a quilt in memoriam.
Okay.
And this quilt ended up filling like the equivalent of like 10 or 12 football fields.
Oh.
Yeah, it became a huge thing. And I was reading all about this. And so I was thinking, what am I going to do for my dissertation? And I decided I would do it on Derek Jarman because he just died and it was all to do with AIDS. And up until that point, I'd been painting, and I was thinking, I want to do a portrait of him, but I want it to kind of capture his personality, because when you read his books, he was a terrific writer, and he wasn't just this sort of gay icon, but he was just a lovely character. And I thought, I don't really know how I can bring him to life, and for some reason, I just thought, I'm going to make him out of wool. It was just a mad idea. And that lunchtime, I went down into Leeds City Market because there was a great haberdashery stall there. And I bought a crochet hook and some flesh-coloured wool. I had no idea what I was going to do. And it took me 6 months, but I basically made Derek out of wool. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it came out really well, if I do say so myself.
Right.
And that's where it began. So it wasn't any method. I just invented it myself. I just kind of thought, right, it's flesh-coloured wool. So if I make a shape that's roughly like that could be a hand. And if I pushed it there and pulled it there, I could make fingers out of it. That's how I did it. It was just sculpture.
Right.
Using wool. So when people say you're a textile artist, it's like, that's just the material I use. I don't know anything about textiles. I've never woven anything. I've never been taught embroidery. I don't know how to knit. I really don't know how to crochet very well.
Right.
So I actually feel a big cheat when people say that. That's just the medium I use.
And do you ever...
In my own way.
Right. Do you ever worry that if you did actually learn how to
I don't want
properly,
to. I don't want to.
It's all of a sudden you'd be like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Because people have often said, why don't you should use a sewing machine. And it's like, oh my God, no. I'd be terrified because then it would be all straight lines and it would control me, whereas right now, the fun part is if I start something, I have this vague idea in my head, I'm going to make something.
Right.
I haven't a clue how I'm going to do it. I just start it.
Right.
And then we go along for the ride. Because when you're working with wool, and you probably don't know this, obviously, wool, the more you pull wool or twist wool, the tension changes and it fights back. And it creates, if you pull it a certain way, it'll mold that way and what have you. so you can never fully control it. It's you got to work with it, So it's
So you have to tame it.
yeah, or it tames you, And
Right.
it's like it's a surprise. It's always a surprise. Right to the end, I look back at it and think, oh, I like how that happened, But I didn't deliberately try that. You know what I mean? So it was like painting, but better than painting for me, because if I'm painting, I have to control the flow of that paint and I have to make it look realistic or get the perspective right or whatever. I don't with wool, so it's just totally free, and quirky. And then when I make these pieces, the weird thing is it brings out this nostalgia in people, because
It's got a connotation with granny.
yeah,
knitting,
exactly. It goes back to a time when your clothes were made by your mum, your aunt, your granny, and then, your jumper would be passed down, unwound, reknitted, given. That was their way of hugging you when they weren't there, kind of thing,
Yeah.
So it has those connotations. So
Which is why you said earlier that some people get very offended with your
no,
work.
they do.
Because to them,
how dare you use something so nice and warm and soft?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that
To
to
put
me,
Boris's face on it.
right, it's something that to me denotes love,
Yeah.
care, some sort of maternal
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibly paternal, but traditionally very maternal. And and you've made some sort of caricature of Boris.
Yeah.
Or you've made
But you can look at it that way, but
Yeah.
you could also look at it and say, look what he's doing to all these things we hold dear. And maybe, because I've made it in that, it might make you think twice, that actually he's not soft and cuddly. He's quite conniving, and you know what I mean? It's saying, look closely.
yeah.
He's not what you think he is.
There's some
kind of
levels
thing.
to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
What other things have I've seen a bunch of things. I've seen some. What have I seen? Like Heinz beans cans and
Yeah, they're just, I just make those playful things for something to do for, commercial stuff. But I've done quite a lot of stingy stuff in wool.
stingy. Tell me about the stingy stuff in wool.
Stuff in wool.
Because I've seen a lot of this in your shop front.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of your shop front. Your
Hung,
shop.
drawn, quoted.
Hung drawn and that's right.
No, not unquoted, just hung, drawn, quoted.
Hung drawn quoted.
Quoted, yeah.
I've seen a lot of it, and obviously I've been to your house a bunch of times, and I've enjoyed your big Sid Vicious cardboard cutout at the top of the stairs,
Yeah.
and all the other sort of various collectibles and trinkets and
Yeah.
punk rock bits and bobs as you
Yeah.
stroll round. It really is a sort of a feast, a sensory feast. But I understand a bit of your work, but just bring everyone else in on sort of what are your stingier pieces, what are the bits that you would probably be most well known
most
for?
of my pieces people haven't seen because they're
Right.
gallery pieces. I've tackled things like obesity crisis, binge drinking, family conflicts, refugees. I've done pieces on that. I've done pieces on nature versus nurture. Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
And how do you go about conceptualizing your message in wool for those? So tell me about the actual. Describe some of these things to me. How did you tackle obesity in wool?
I made a piece called The Big Bang, and I've made the 5 a day. They say eat these 5 a day.
Five vegetables a
Yeah,
day.
but rather than vegetables, I've made them the 5 a day that you're more likely to see people eating.
Right.
So I've copied them. So there's Walker's Crisp, there's energy drink, there's a McDonald's burger, there's like a double-sized chocolate bar, all stuff like that. And then coming from them are like wires leading to, it's all done in wool, leading to dynamite with a ticking clock on it. So it's like the Big Bang. And again, because it's made in wool, it's sort of saying...
Takes the edge off it a bit,
Well,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
but it's also saying we've lost that family connection. Like, we're letting our families eat this crap.
Right.
We're not monitoring. Because we don't sit round the table and serve up homemade meals like we used to, because that's how it was. Now do you know that your kid's having like 3 or 4 energy drinks a day? You're probably not aware that that's what they're eating and this is what it's going to do to them, kind of thing.
Right.
It's sort of saying we've lost. The one thing about having the family was it not only gave you this kind of connection to everybody, but we all ate better and communicated better and everything because we were linked, as a family more than, modern society, nobody's got time for anything.
Yeah.
And, that also gets into arguments about who should do the cooking and stuff. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I'm just sort of saying like we are not looking closely enough at what we're doing to ourselves, and the wool thing does kind of still link back to that, nurture versus, or nature versus nurture. Yeah.
And okay, and what were the other subjects you mentioned there?
I did one again on the nature versus nurture, about how you choose to bring people up. Like, is it how you bring them up, or is it how you're born, or whatever? So I did one of the 7 deadly sins, but they're all as baby grows.
Right.
So they're hanging on a washing line.
Yeah.
And they're all the 7 deadly sins are represented through these baby grows. So you've got vanity, you've got greed, you've got what have you, but they're all represented in a twisted way. It's kind of hard to describe. Yeah, I'm kind of saving those for when I can put them on show in this town.
Right.
Yeah, but
what's stopping you from putting them on show? You just need to have a big enough collection, or
no, I've got the collection. I'm just waiting to finish our building so we can.
Oh. Which brings me on to hung, drawn, quoted.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because I didn't know you were doing that. And then
I didn't know I was doing that until a couple of months ago.
Didn't you start off doing some stuff in Poot?
Yeah.
With Kira?
Yeah. Poot, Kira and Poot very kindly gave me my start in Frowned, allowed me to show my work in their windows. Poot is
a sort of a vintage.
It's an eclectic, handmade, homemade, emporium of delights.
Yes.
There's everything from jewellery, clothing, vintage. Yeah, it's just a smorgasbord. Of lovely things, yeah.
Because I started seeing, because when I go to yours and do sort of radio bits with Eleanor, or hang out and have a drink with you guys and whatnot, then I started seeing stuff from your house, and I started seeing your stuff, and that's how I put 2 and 2 together, that you were
right.
That that's not stuff you'd bought or whatever, that was stuff you make.
Yeah.
And then I saw it in Poot, and then I started seeing it in its own window, and then I was like, oh, we've upgraded here. so you were in Poot for a bit, and she gave you that showcase and that front window.
Yeah.
And was that successful enough from there to tell you, okay, we could probably go this alone?
It was a great success, but I did always want my own shop. That's always been my intention. When we moved to Froome, that's what I wanted. But it was where we could find something. There just wasn't the opportunity at the time. And then the building that we're now in came up for auction, and we were very lucky to win it. It needs a lot of work.
I've been in. I've seen some work being done. It needs a
hell of a lot of work. And we moved in because we were going to do it up first, but then we found out that we couldn't get proper insurance unless we were actually in the building. So I decided to move in as a pop-up shop.
Right.
And I've been in a couple of months, and it's going great.
It is going
actually,
good.
Most people don't even realise it's not supposed to be in that state. It's very Shoreditch looking, yeah.
So tell me what sort of stuff you're selling in there. So you've got prints of your work. And
it's mostly my artwork, yeah. So all the cards based on my designs. There's well over 100 different card designs in there. Prints of my work, tea towels, tote bags. I make shrink plastic badges and things of like rock stars or soap opera stars, or they're all kind of kitsch and quirky.
I have a Prince badge that you gave me the other day. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have all kinds of stuff. And obviously I have the ongoing political war in the window.
Yes. Tell me about this.
Well, that started in Poot when Boris came to power and everything started going tits up. I felt compelled to make a little doll of him, mainly so I could stab him with a needle many times. But he started as this little figure, and every time he put his foot in it, I would kind of force him to do the Prime Minister's question time, so that we could have the speech bubbles and we could see how ludicrous he really was. And he'd write it himself. I didn't even have to do much,
Right.
But when you'd see it writ large in a speech bubble, you'd just say, this is ridiculous. And because I had it in the window, people started reacting to it. And then, of course, I had to keep up to it. And it's been going on ever since he's been in power, really. And then with all the COVID thing. And it just, writes itself. Hence the reason he's with Peppa Pig in the window at the moment.
That's weird. Right, that's strange, right? This is strange. This is very strange. At the school I'm working, one of the students yesterday, I think, what was today? Yesterday, changed the wallpaper of their computer to a picture of Boris, and there was a picture of Peppa Pig side by side. And he went, "Do you like my new wallpaper, Andy?" And I went, yeah. I was like, "Why is Peppa Pig next to Boris?" And he was like, "I don't know, I just thought it was funny."
So he didn't know about it?
I don't...
He must have come in unconsciously, because it's out there at the moment. Because that's his latest faux pas, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
have you not heard about it?
No,
my
tell me
God.
about it.
No,
Tell me about it.
He did a speech at the CBI? And he was reading his notes, and Boris, being Boris, is never prepared. He turned up and started to just, flap through it like normal, lost his train of thought, then completely lost his train of thought for like 20 seconds, which is a long time.
Long time up there, yeah.
And he was just turning his notes over and going, forgive me. And then he just starts launching into, I went to Peppa Pig World, and started just making up this thing about how wonderful Peppa Pig World was, and then trying to turn it into this, what a global, successful enterprise Peppa Pig World is, because it's got good road connections. And then he started talking about cars and was going brum brum, and you think this is our Prime Minister? He's lost
Peppa
it.
Pig World is
Brum
brum.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Fantastic. Okay. Oh, right. Well, I have to look at that.
Yep.
And now I
So
get it.
Now you get it.
For a minute, I thought that those two events were completely unlinked.
Oh, and I had to phone around at 7:00 at night to try and find a Peppa Pig, because I got to be on it. It's what's expected.
Yeah, hi, it's Kate Talbot. Do you happen to have a Peppa Pig? Oh, she's very attached to it, is she? Okay, no worries. I'll ring someone else. Amazing. So, tell me, I had the great pleasure the other day of taking on a mayoral duty, which, let me tell you, was not a chore. They never are. And this was opening up your new, what is it, exhibition? What is
Installation.
it? Installation.
Yeah.
Called Santa's Grotty. Not Santa's Grotto.
No.
Grotty.
Yeah.
Tell me. Tell me.
Well,
I know.
I was just chatting to friends a few weeks ago, and because we're doing up this building that we're in, at the back of where my shop is the space that's going to be the gallery, and the walls are, in a dire state at the moment. There's plaster missing off. There's bits of the ceiling have fallen down, and we were just saying,
Clock that.
Yeah, and we were thinking, Christmas is coming, and somebody said, we should have a Santa's grotto, and then we said, no, actually, it should be a Santa's grotty. And then we got to talking about Dismal Land, which Banksy did. And then I thought...
That was his take on... That was an installation, wasn't it? On Disneyland.
Yeah.
I didn't go. I knew some people that went. Apparently, it's a very exclusive situation.
I never got in. I tried to get tickets. I didn't get in. So I don't really know what he did.
What is totally in there?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming it was just sort of all about big business taking over and, just what it does to the world kind of thing.
Right.
Through the eyes of like Disney World or whatever, done like that. And yeah, turning it on its head. Showing the darker side, I think, is what that was all about.
Right.
And done like every year somebody puts on a Santa's Wonderland that turns out to disappoint everybody severely, and it ends up in the tabloids, doesn't it? You know, my daughter will never get over it, because Santa was only 5. It's just stupid things like that.
Santa's wooden leg fell off.
Yeah,
and hurt
exactly.
my
Or
daughter.
Santa wasn't there, or that wasn't a real reindeer. It's that kind of stuff. So we were just joking about it with friends. And then I was thinking, I suddenly thought, well, I've got the Boris, conservative, showdown in the window. Why don't I kind of carry that through?
Right.
And because at the moment everybody's sort of looking at a not very pleasant Christmas if everything is going to be what they say it is. So there's going to be a shortage of food and toys. Apparently, there's going to be mayhem. We won't be able to get anything.
And
so
the new
it's-
COVID variant.
And the new COVID variant. So, so Santa's Grotty is a grotto for adults only. Mm-hmm. It's not for children. And it's just about how the government have mishandled COVID and everything, in the last few years, and how we're getting into this terrible state everywhere right now because nobody's kind of keeping an eye on what they're doing. Billions of pounds are being lost on ridiculous things and nobody's been held accountable, and we're all sort of turning a blind eye. So maybe, I really like satire because I believe that, like many a true word is spoken in jest, and that sometimes that's the way you have to get a point across. Like, if you ever want to know what's going on in the world, look at the comedians, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
And so we thought, why don't we do like a tongue-in-cheek but quite truthful installation based on, Santa's grotto, where you will be being disappointed is what you come in for. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's £5 entry.
It's £5 entry. That includes a raffle ticket for the Christmas hampered, and you get a free gift. And
I've had the free gift.
You've had the free.
I don't want to spoil it.
No, don't
I
spoil
don't
it.
want to spoil it.
Yeah, and
But it's sort of disappointing, but not as well.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's fun.
Yeah, you're supposed to be disappointed.
I'm like, there's some weight to this. This might be good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
oh.
And all the profits go to Fair Froom. So it is for charity.
Right on.
Yeah.
Fair Froom, for those who don't know, is our Froome Bank, our food bank here in Froome, and they also have a furniture bank as well. They're incredible. They're incredible. Mm-hmm. They do incredible work. They treat everyone with dignity. Everyone gets more than they expect, and it's incredible. I always try to sort those guys out when I'm doing anything charitable or whatever. They're the guys I go to. So yeah, they're amazing, and that's amazing that you're turning something satirical and scathing into something positive, because there's a few things.
But the sad fact is we shouldn't need Fair Froom.
Right.
That's the whole point of it. It's we're doing this for them because our government isn't looking after people.
Right.
That's what it comes down to, unfortunately.
I think they say something like, their goal is to sort of make themselves out of a job or something like that. It's sort of like they want to be so successful, or they want things to be so good that they're not actually needed anymore.
What, who the government say
Fair
that?
Froome.
Oh, Fair Froome. Yeah, sorry. I was going to say that doesn't sound like the government.
No, it does sound
No,
like
exactly. No, no, it's wonderful that these places exist, but, they shouldn't have to exist.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
And how much of Santa's Grotty can we talk about? Because I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah. Well, basically just to say, if you come along, you have to keep your eyes open.
Right.
You mustn't rush through it. You have
I
to-
wasn't. I couldn't rush through it because
No.
of some certain. I want to talk about it if I can. I couldn't rush through it.
No. Yeah, I'm worried that certain people kind of like, I don't know what their expectations are because I don't have children, so I don't know what a Santa's grotto really looks like, and I'm too old to
rubbish.
remember. Yeah.
It's rubbish. Tacky rubbish.
Yeah. So this is
Other than any Santa's grotto in Frowned.
right.
Anywhere else, rubbish.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's just. Yeah, I don't want to say too much.
We'll keep a bit of mystique. Is there anything? Can you find anything about it on your website?
I don't. No, you can't. No, you have to come to the shop.
All right, you have to come to the shop.
You come to the shop. You can buy tickets at the shop at the door. I mean, you don't have to go in straight away. It's on for a month, but you buy tickets there. And there are leaflets throughout town that do give my email address and say that you can either get it through email or come into the shop.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what's next after this? Yeah, so we were talking about your. Can we talk about your idea for the
what?
the new thing in the shop? Can we talk about that? Are we talking about that? Was that just a harebrained idea that?
What we want to do?
Yeah.
See, no. Watch this space.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know.
You don't want to overpromise.
I don't want to promise if it can't be delivered.
Right.
Not in this town. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. But there'll always be something.
But let me say,
Yeah.
if you do what we were talking about you doing, we hanging out in there.
Okay.
We
okay.
coming, we
Now
hanging
you're getting
out.
the expectations up. They're going to be so disappointed.
We coming, we hanging.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming on.
You're very welcome.